When the United States insisted that Canadians, young men, go and die in the rice paddies of Vietnam, we said, no, we're not going to send our young men to die in Vietnam. It's a wrong war, and it was a wrong war. And we opened our borders to many great young Americans who were not going to go die needlessly in Vietnam.
That's right.
When they tried to pressure us to go into the false attack on Iraq, we said no. And we were under enormous pressure then. And in the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan was launching horrific violence in Latin America, in El Salvador and Guatemala, and then they were deporting thousands of people out of the United States who were trying to escape the genocide that was happening in the hills of Guatemala, they put enormous pressure on us to close our border because people who could not go back to the death squads in El Salvador and Guatemala were trying to cross the border at Buffalo to get into Canada to be safe. And at that time, Brian Mulroney said, oh, we have to have the same border principles as the United States. And Canadians stood up and said, no, those are not our values. And we pushed that back because we could not send people back to the death squads. So yes, they are our neighbors, but we have stood up to them. We're in a different situation with Donald Trump, a convicted predator who's seriously undermining the democratic process in the United States, and he thinks he can just push us around. Exactly. He insults us. Yep. You know, the Conservatives seem to like it because he's insulting our Prime Minister, but he's not really insulting the Prime Minister. He's insulting Canadians, calling us the 51st state.
That's right, exactly.
You know, once there was a Canada that had a flag that didn't need to be waved. A flag that represented who we are. We didn't boast about it. It wasn't until our flag was appropriated by conspiracy haters and stuck on pickup trucks, promoting all kinds of disinformation. Our flag was something that just said, it's about values. And it's something that we all understood. We didn't have to brag about. We didn't have to brag about that when we were a country of 11 million people and the Americans were saying, oh, we don't want to go to war. On the very first day Hitler invaded Poland, 11 million Canadians stood up and created the fourth largest air force in the world, the fourth largest navy in the world. We sent our young people all across the world to defend the notion of freedom and parliamentary democracy. And we paid an enormous price. And we came back and we didn't wave the flag. Then we just came back and did what we did because we were Canadians. But here we are with this falsehood being perpetrated by the member who lives in Stornoway that whatever Donald Trump says, he will use to burn the house down to the Prime Minister. So he's using this falsehood on fentanyl, which is an absolute falsehood. I have the Drug Enforcement Agency unclassified reports on fentanyl. Fentanyl, they write about China. They write about India. They write about Mexico. There's just one very tiny thing about a small amount coming from Canada. That's not the issue. Fentanyl's not the issue, but the Conservatives will use that falsehood, threatening a 25% tariff. You can bet that these dumbed-down speeches